What's the most holy shit that's clever crime you've ever seen? Story 1. My buddy's a detective and told me about this couple who basically turned Walmart self-checkout into their own personal free grocery subscription service for over a year. These weren't random shoplifters either. Both of them used to work on the Walmart self-checkout systems at corporate level, like tech support, startup team type stuff, which already means they understood those machines better than the exhausted teenager supervising 12 registers and silently begging for death. So here's the scam. They'd load up giant carts of expensive stuff, head to self-checkout, then intentionally trigger an issue. But before that, they'd secretly put scotch tape over the scanner employees use for their badges. So when the worker tried logging in, the badge wouldn't scan, and they'd manually type their 4-digit employee code instead. Boom. Code observed. Then after the employee walked away, these two little retail supervillains would reopen the admin menu using the stolen code and cancel the entire transaction after paying. Machine prints a suspended transaction receipt that looked almost identical to a real one, except for tiny text at the bottom. And since most receipt checkers glance at receipts for half a second before returning to dissociation, these people just rolled thousands of dollars of stuff straight out the door. Honestly, the craziest part is they only got caught because eventually somebody probably read the receipt all the way down, which feels impossible at Walmart. Most people barely read stop signs anymore. Story 2. My dad used to own one of those old-school film development/photo studio businesses back in the 80s and 90s before digital cameras basically hit the entire industry with a meteor. Anyway, he hires this young salesman who's insanely charismatic. Dude couldn't take a decent photo to save his life and apparently handled film like a gorilla with fireworks, but he could sell. School photos, weddings, military events, newspaper contracts, business exploded. Then this guy offers, "Hey, my tax guy can handle your business taxes cheaper," which in hindsight is basically the opening line of every future true crime documentary ever made. The second tax paperwork goes through, this dude completely changes personality, starts sabotaging customers, screaming at people, ignoring phones, even opens undeveloped wedding film and ruins 2 weddings worth of photos, which is psychotic levels of damn it. Imagine having to recreate your entire wedding because some lunatic decided to speedrun unemployment. Then they fire him, immediately gets sued. Turns out this guy had secretly gotten the accountant to file the business as a partnership instead of sole ownership. So now legally, he could claim part ownership of the company assets, cameras, lab equipment, machines, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Dude basically performed an administrative home invasion. And the craziest part, he kept doing it. Different cities, different businesses, same accountant, same lawyer, car stereo shops, construction companies, restaurants, just this weird traveling scam trio wandering America like financially literate parasites. Honestly terrifying because there's no ski mask, no guns, no hacking, just paperwork, which somehow feels even more evil. Story 3. This armored truck robber pulled off some Bugs Bunny level nonsense, and honestly, I'm still mad about how clever it was. Dude posts a Craigslist ad for a fake construction job near the robbery site. Says everybody needs to show up wearing the exact same outfit. Yellow safety vest, blue shirt, work boots, goggles, respirator mask, which already sounds sketchy as hell. If a job application starts dressing you like a background extra in a gas leak evacuation, maybe ask a follow-up question, but apparently a bunch of people actually showed up. So the robbery happens, witnesses are describing a guy in construction gear, and cops roll up to find like 20 dudes wandering around dressed identically, confused, holding lunch boxes and resumes, just an accidental flash mob of unemployed Walter Whites. Imagine being innocent and suddenly getting interrogated because you answered a Craigslist ad offering competitive pay, must bring steel toe boots. I'd be so pissed, standing there like, bro, I thought I was installing drywall. Why is there a helicopter here? That's criminal strategy mixed with pure chaotic evil. Like socially engineered camouflage. Honestly, terrifying. Also kinda hilarious in the dumbest possible way. Story 4. There was this nightclub owner in Liverpool stealing electricity in a way that honestly sounds like something a retired supervillain would come up with after 3 whiskeys and a napkin sketch. Power company knew something was off because the club's electric bill suddenly dropped to like a quarter of what the previous owner paid, which, for a nightclub, is insane. Those places burn electricity like they're trying to contact aliens. Lights, sound systems, freezers, probably a bathroom hand dryer that sounds like a jet engine. So for 2 years, they're investigating, checking meters, checking lines, probably accusing random employees of witchcraft. Nothing. Finally, they send out some old veteran meter guy. The kind of dude who's seen every scam since electricity was invented. Probably smelled faintly like cigarettes and mechanical pencils. He opens the meter box and figures it out almost immediately. They'd rigged a pressure switch onto the door. If the inspector opened the meter, it worked perfectly. Numbers spinning, everything normal. But the second the box closed, boom. Meter stopped tracking usage entirely. That is such a beautifully petty little engineering crime. Like Ocean's 11 for people who own wire cutters. And somewhere during those 2 years, this nightclub owner was probably watching strobe lights flash all night thinking, hell yeah, the city's basically sponsoring this rave. Story 5. My dad used to work financial crimes, and according to him, most criminals are unbelievably stupid. Like, leave your driver's license at the robbery scene, stupid. But one case actually impressed him for years. This group figured out how to skim literal pennies off massive payroll batches before everything became fully digital. Tiny amounts, 1 cent here, 2 cents there, across thousands of employee paychecks. Nobody notices missing pennies. People barely notice happiness anymore. And somehow these dudes made the book still balance, which is the scary part. They weren't just stealing money, they were doing accounting wizardry, like evil little math goblins in a basement somewhere. Best part? Their whole crew used D&D nicknames. Wizard, troll, stuff like that. Which means somewhere federal agents were seriously discussing suspects named after cave creatures. Years later, my dad gets pulled into another embezzlement interview and he's supposed to play bad cop. But the suspect keeps staring at him nervously, and finally my dad goes, "Hold on, you're troll!" Imagine getting recognized by your criminal Dungeons and Dragons handle years later by a detective. I would simply evaporate on the spot. Instead, my dad apparently just starts chatting with the guy like old co-workers reconnecting at a barbecue. Man, that payroll scheme was clever as hell. Other detectives probably sitting there confused beyond belief while the suspect starts relaxing, because apparently nothing disarms criminals faster than getting complimented on their previous felonies. And somehow that got them the info they needed. Honestly, detectives solving crimes through accidental nerd recognition is maybe the most human thing ever. Story 6. I heard about this farmer in Sweden who basically looked at the electrical grid and said, what if I just borrow electricity directly from physics itself? Power company kept noticing this weird energy loss between 2 points on the grid for years. Tiny enough to not trigger instant panic, but enough that engineers knew something sketchy was happening. So they're probably out there checking transformers, blaming equipment, yelling at clipboards. Whole utility company meltdown. Eventually, they notice the missing power always lines up with this one farmer running his irrigation system. Turns out this absolute Scandinavian goblin had buried a giant copper coil underneath high-voltage power lines and built it carefully enough to induce electricity wirelessly. Dude basically made a homemade transformer out in a field like some off-brand Nikola Tesla. No direct tap, no obvious illegal hookup, just raw electromagnetic wizardry, siphoning enough power to run farm equipment. Honestly, that's the kind of crime where even the investigators probably paused for a second like, well, damn. And you know the farmer was probably out there watering crops, pretending nothing was happening while secretly operating the world's most rural supervillain laboratory. Chickens wandering around, tractor parked nearby. Meanwhile, underneath the dirt is a DIY science project, powerful enough to annoy an entire utility company for years. That's not even theft anymore. That's artisanal electricity crime. Story 7. A bank in my hometown got robbed during this absolutely biblical snowstorm, where the town got buried under like 12 feet of snow in 2 days. Not all schools are closed snow either. I mean full apocalypse weather, the kind where local news reporters start looking emotionally defeated on camera. And these dudes realized early in the storm, the bank was somehow still open because apparently banks operate under the logic of, well, if Deborah made it in, everybody else can too. So masked guys walk in with guns, rob the place, then just leave on foot into the blizzard, which sounds insane until you realize it was actually genius. Because police response time during that storm was apparently like 45 minutes minimum. Roads were wrecked, visibility sucked. Everything was chaos. By the time cops finally got there, all the footprints and tracks were already buried under fresh snowfall. Nature itself deleted the evidence. Honestly, imagine being the detective trying to solve that. Suspects appear to have escaped north, south, east, west, or directly into another dimension. And the robbers were probably out there trudging through waist-deep snow, carrying duffel bags full of cash, thinking, this is either the smartest thing we've ever done, or we are 100% dying of hypothermia tonight. Story 8. Had an old buddy who used to run with a professional car theft crew back in the day. Not steal a Honda for a joyride, idiots either. These dudes had an actual system. They'd steal older Camaros, trucks, muscle cars, strip them down, repaint everything, swap parts, then slap clean VINs from junkyard wrecks onto them. Because one neighboring state apparently treated totaled cars like paperwork was optional. Absolute DMV caveman-era bureaucracy. So they'd buy a completely obliterated wreck with a clean title, transfer the VIN onto the stolen car, crush the actual wreck for scrap metal, then sell the freshly legit car to unsuspecting people. Honestly, the scam only worked because government record systems back then were basically a filing cabinet held together by cigarette smoke and divorce. Anyway, I asked him what finally made him quit. This man goes, "The district attorney." Turns out the DA wanted a Camaro for his wife and came by with the sheriff to test drive one my buddy had sitting in his garage. Meanwhile, there's another stolen car, literally half disassembled 3 feet away, and a freshly stolen truck parked outside. Dude said his soul left his body instantly, like full cartoon sweat mode. Internal organs shutting down, probably hearing church bells and police sirens simultaneously. And the craziest part, they loved the Camaro and paid cash. My friend said the second they left, he hauled every shady car part he owned straight to the scrapyard and bought a legitimate car that same day, which honestly feels less like morality and more like surviving a Final Destination scene. Story 9. I knew a company that did phone orders and had this refund system that basically became a temptation speed run for employees with bad impulse control. First guy figures out he can process a customer payment normally, then later refund the order onto his own debit card instead of the customer's. Since refunds balance the books automatically, accounting didn't catch it for a while. Dude was basically using customer complaints as an ATM. They finally caught him because refunds suddenly spiked, and management started calling customers asking about service issues. Customers are like, refund? What refund? Which is probably not the answer corporate hopes for during quality control calls. Guy gets fired, charged, whole deal. Now here's where it gets insane. 2 years later, the manager is literally training a new supervisor named Heather on this exact scam. Like, hey, watch out, people steal this way. Full cautionary tale mode. Couple weeks later, the payment processor calls. Hey, refunds are going to a card unrelated to your business. Manager starts checking timestamps, asks Heather who was working those shifts. She goes, I'll check tomorrow. Meanwhile, the processor calls back immediately after like a sitcom punchline. Do you know someone named Heather? Absolute catastrophic timing. And apparently, she confessed instantly. Said she tried it once just to see if it worked. Then kept going because it was easy. Stole $6,000, felony territory, ruined an $80,000 management job in the 90s, which back then was real money. Like owning a boat without stress money. That's the creepiest part about embezzlement stories, honestly. Sometimes there's no mastermind motive, no gambling debt, no movie villain speech, just people discovering a loophole and their moral compass immediately blue screening. Story 10. Dude figured out this gas station's card system basically turned into a trust fall exercise every time the satellite went down, which, insane design by the way. Like somebody at corporate really said, yeah, if we lose all connection to the financial system, let's just keep approving transactions anyway. What could happen? Incredible. Absolute clown architecture. So this guy climbs onto the roof in broad daylight. Or maybe night. Honestly, somehow funnier if it's 2 a.m. And he's up there like a raccoon with criminal intent and wraps the satellite dish in foil, like he's baking a potato. Suddenly the station loses connection and the pumps start accepting every card imaginable because the system can't verify shit in real time. Then this man casually swipes a canceled credit card and fills up. Probably snacks too. You know he grabbed beef jerky. Criminals always get beef jerky when they feel invincible. And the wildest part? It apparently worked more than once before they caught on, which means somewhere there's a gas station manager explaining to cops that the entire fraud operation was defeated by removing Reynolds Wrap access from the shelves. Story 11. There was apparently this bank robber hitting places during massive storms like he was role-playing as a low-budget Batman villain. Dude figured out the perfect disguise was just existing during horrible weather in 2020. Mask on, hood up, rain pouring sideways hard enough to erase facial features from reality itself. Walks into banks and stores, hands over a note basically saying, "Give me the money or I'll kill everybody here." No screaming, no theatrics, no movie nonsense, which honestly is probably scarier. Quiet people are terrifying. Loud criminals feel manageable. Quiet criminals make you start updating your will internally. And somehow, this dude hit like 10 banks plus stores without getting caught. What kills me is half the employees didn't even trigger silent alarms until minutes after he left. Imagine this man radiating such intense, "I absolutely will ruin your day" energy that trained employees just froze completely. Dude probably didn't even have a gun either, which makes it worse somehow. Just raw intimidation stats maxed out. Also, apparently security cameras never caught a getaway car. Nothing. So either he had somebody pick him up nearby, or, honestly, this is funnier to picture, he just casually wandered off into the rain like an NPC despawning after a side mission. Meanwhile, detectives are probably scrubbing through storm camera footage trying to identify male shape with hoodie. Helpful. Incredible forensic challenge there, like hunting Bigfoot through a car wash. Story 12. I worked assistant manager at this tiny deli/corner store, and one of the cashiers kept bragging he was getting a free bag of weed every week off the store. Not to me, obviously. Criminals always think management is psychic until inventory day hits. But he was telling coworkers like he was the goddamn Ocean's 11 of convenience stores. Thing was, the books always matched. Registers clean, inventory mostly fine. Dude even looked like an overachiever because he was weirdly good with coupon redemptions. Like absurdly good. Bro was out here couponing like a suburban mom named Denise with a binder full of vengeance. Took me forever to notice the scam. I'm doing inventory 1 week. And see, we supposedly sold a mountain of ice cream bars. I'm mentally preparing to haul boxes from the freezer thinking, Jesus Christ, did this neighborhood get high simultaneously? Then I open the freezer and it's packed full. That's when it clicked. The POS system accepted coupons without scanning the product UPC first, meaning coupons basically worked like cash if you knew the loophole. This little gremlin was ringing fake coupon sales through and pocketing like $80 a week. Honestly, smart, illegal, dumb long-term, absolutely gonna implode eventually, but smart. All because the register had the cybersecurity standards of a lemonade stand. Story 13. One of the smartest, dumb criminal stories I heard was this couple that stole a car, then swapped the plates with another car that was the exact same make and model. Same color too, I think, which is honestly evil genius territory, because cops running the plate would just see a totally normal registered vehicle. So these idiots go on a police chase using the stolen car with my plates on it. Meanwhile, my poor husband suddenly almost gets arrested because according to the police database, he apparently just fled from cops at 90 miles per hour, like he secretly turned into Vin Diesel after work. Then I had to explain, our car is literally parked at the train station right now. Cops probably thought we were lying until we drove over there. And sure enough, our actual car is sitting there untouched. Except now it has the stolen car's plates attached to it like some criminal Freaky Friday situation. Apparently the officers were genuinely impressed because most car thieves are not exactly strategic masterminds. Usually they're caught because they crash into a mailbox while holding meth and a warrant. But this actually delayed police long enough to confuse everybody. Still got caught eventually though, because criminals always get greedy or stupid in the end. It's basically a law of physics, like gravity, taxes, and a stolen Dodge Charger, eventually wrapping itself around a utility pole. Story 14. Back in the 2000s, apparently there was this hilariously stupid airline loophole where people would order brand new credit cards, never activate them, then use them during long-haul flights to ball out like divorced tech CEOs. See, the onboard card machines back then couldn't verify purchases in real time because the plane had no internet, so the transaction would basically go, "Hey, looks legit enough," and let you upgrade to first class mid-flight, which is insane. Imagine a financial security system built entirely on vibes at 35,000 feet. So these dudes are up there drinking champagne, buying duty-free watches, probably reclining their seats with the confidence of a man whose bank account contains $17 and unresolved trauma. Then, the plane lands, internet reconnects, and suddenly every transaction declines because the cards were never activated in the first place. But by then, the The scammers are already gone, wandering through baggage claim, pretending they earned that first-class blanket. What kills me is the airlines apparently struggled proving who got what, which sounds impossible now because modern airlines track when you blink too aggressively near a boarding gate. But early 2000 systems were apparently held together with printer ink and prayer. Thanks for hanging out and hearing these absolutely unhinged stories with me. Subscribe for more. See you next video.